Hi, welcome along Misty Acres Native Plant Nursery. We're going to show you through the nursery today. We've got a nice fine day, no wind, so everything's in our favour. The reason that we grow these natives is we're trying to grow something that was in need, which is what natives are at the moment, and also something that was wanted on bulk, as opposed to maybe growing azaleas and camellias, and there's so many varieties and some will want pink and one will want a red, and they'll just be just too difficult. So we're doing the natives where we can grow bulk and sell bulk. It's the plan. It's not always what happens, but that's the plan. So I'll show you through what we've got and tell you a few other details and facts that we operate by. Down here we've got Formium 10X, which is a New Zealand flax, Harakiki. That's usually about the smallest that they sell for. These are sort of the last ones that are still available for this year. These through here, these are newly bagged, so these will be ready next year, and there's a few more to bag up yet, so probably be running about 500 or 600 of these at a time. Then over here we've got a few Carcabeak growing in here, Clyanthus, some Caprosmas that are still coming on. They were actually sort of seedlings that were left for a while but have decided to resurrect them, so they're starting to shoot away, so they'll be right another month or two. And then in here we've got the Libertias. So this is what we had planted up in our place the other week, which you may have seen that video. So they're a nice little grass, New Zealand iris they're called. So there's a good 200 or 300 of those still available. And then over here we've got Dodonaea viscosa and Dodonaea viscosa purpurea. So that's Aki is the Maori name, and they'll have a common name somewhere there. It's probably different all over the place. So these are the purple ones. We've got quite a few of these growing around our property. They can get up a few metres high. Good for cover though, and good colour. And then we've got a green variety here the same. So these are still coming away. They'll be ready later this year, but they'll also hold over to next year, even if I have to pot them up a little bit larger, which isn't always the best plan to do. So they've only been in, I have to check a label, maybe a few months, 2 months at the most, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Then we've got Aileria paniculata, which is these front ones, and we've got Aileria cheesemani. So these are once again the same age as these Dodonaeas, so they've obviously got to grow a bit before they're ready for sale. They need a few more roots on them yet and get a bit higher. A lot of stuff is sold out or in the process of still selling out. Planting time normally for this sort of material, so April to October, so Easter to Labour weekend. Soil's still warm and you get rainfall and you're not battling the heat of summer where the plants dry out, especially when you're doing mass planting out rural areas where you can't water them every day. They need to have moisture, so that's why they get that time of the year. These are Carnuka, another native, Kunzia ericoides, so they're quite a good size. That's sort of an average height for them, sometimes a little taller. So there's a few of those still left. Then these look similar when they're all this age. So these are Manuka or tea tree, Leptospermum scoparium. So they're a good grade. Those are all sold. They're actually going to a property not far from here, along with a whole lot of other things. If I held them much longer, I'd probably have to give them just a trim across the top and trim the roots underneath, but they're pretty good. I actually bagged a lot of things up later this year because although planting is often April to October, sometimes organisations and councils don't get to it till about May or June, so I found I was having my plants ready in April or early May and they weren't quite selling, so when they were ready to go. They were almost just past their peak or getting too big, and they're starting to get difficult to hold and to manage, and I'd have to trim them or take care of the roots. So I planted quite a bit later from tubes into these pots, and they've held quite well. So like I say, these are all sold. We have bird netting in this structure. This is what we call our top nursery. Top because it's at the higher part of our property. It's no better in quality or in plants, just our top nursery. And bird netting is to stop birds getting in. When I first started growing natives, I had just a little area, you know, as big as half the size of a lounge floor, and I had netting over it. Well, I didn't have netting over it, I had netting around the side just in case rabbits were going to get in and eat them. And I had tiny little, I think I had flax or cabbage trees growing, little seedlings, and starling birds were coming in and stealing them. And I know they were stealing them because I found where they're building their nest, and there were my little plants were in their pile of straw. So it was quite frustrating. So I put netting over those little ones. So once I built this nursery, which was probably about 4 or so years ago, put the bird netting on the top to stop the birds, and on the sides, and on this side, which is the westerly side and doesn't have such a big hedge, although we've decided to plant one now, we've got windbreak. So it looks like shade cloth more or less, but it's windbreak. So it's all enclosed, and we have netting around the bottom and the outside, so we try to keep everything out except for humans. Mostly it works. Sometimes I've had the odd little bird in, but they don't seem to be eating anything, and the plants are big enough in here. The trick is trying to chase them out the doors because they don't find the door. They seem to be clever to get in, but they're not very clever to get out. These are 5-finger Pseudopanix arboreus, and they grow into a big tall tree, big bushy plant. They're a good size, and they're all pre-sold as well, but this is the kind of stuff we grow. We have more coming on of all of these, so by next year we'll have more again if they happen to all be gone. Kofi's Sephora tetraptera, they're great. That looks like a good size, and it is for a little plant. Most of mine are all growing in 1.4 litre pots, which they call 14 centimetre. I find they don't live very well when they go out in the wild and they're left to their own devices, both at my place and people who have planted them out, you know, rural, where they're left to go. So I tend not to sell this size, and I bag them up into 5 litre or 10 litre and grow them up to 3 feet or 6 feet. So I sell them more as a tree, and they seem to have far better success. So we'll have a look at them when we go down to our lower nursery, which is where the big stuff is. We have ribbonwood, which is plagianthus. So once again, a tree. That's usually about the smallest they are when they sell. These grow fairly quick. So there's only a few of these left. They've sort of probably won't be needed much this year, so I've bagged up a few more, and I've got plenty more in tubes to bag up. They'll grow enough to sell this year, so if they're needed in the next 2-3 months, which is still good viable time for planting, they'll be available. So we've taken care of a lot of the pests with our bird netting and our rabbit and hare proofing. We don't have deer wandering around eating plants here. We don't tend to get that trouble too much.
Not yet.
In New Zealand, not yet. Not yet.
Down
But anyway, they'll be taken care of if they are. So we're taking care of the wildlife. The other pests obviously you get with plants, and especially when you start intensifying a bit, where you've got a whole lot of same varieties and everyone's stacked in together, is insect pests and disease. I don't get an awful lot of that trouble. I don't spray very much at all in a whole year. Sometimes caterpillars, mostly on the Kofis, and mostly on our bigger ones. Maybe I give them 2 sprays in a year. I just notice that the leaves are getting eaten, and obviously you can't find everyone and squash them, so you've got to spray. That's all there is to it. I don't tend to get funguses. Sometimes these 5-fingers get a black spot, so they'll get a spray, but yeah, not regularly, not weekly, not a written plan. Probably the worst pest is weeds, like every gardener and every crop, weeds coming up. One of the worst ones, I'll just show you, that I find if I'm in a hurry, it's going to rain, I'm going away, or I've just been a bit naughty and haven't done any weeding, is cress. So this one is cress. This little one here has these little white flowers. They slowly will go to seed. When the wind or the rain or an animal or a person touches them, they flick out all their seeds and they go everywhere. So then they're populating. So, you know, they're worse than a lot of other weeds. So like I say, if I'm in a hurry or haven't had time, I'll sometimes whiz through the whole nursery and just have my cress eyes on and pull them out. So that's probably my worst weed, and the biggest pest is weeding. It's not a huge problem, there's not a lot of weeds, and we're not a huge nursery, I'm the only one working in it. Brenna, who you've met, my wife, will come out and help load plants of weed from time to time, but she's working full times as well, so it's usually just me. So I can weed the whole place, which is due for a weed now. It's not bad, it's definitely not overgrown, so it's quite a tidy nursery. I like to run things fairly clean and tidy. So here we've got the beloved Griselinea. Some people don't like them. I think most people don't mind them. They're a pretty good plant actually. They're always green. They're hardy as, make an excellent hedge. It might depend on your situation. If you've got a 400 square metre site with your house on it right in the middle of town, maybe a Griselinea hedge isn't right for you, because they bigger leaves, they sort of do take up a bit of room, the plant. You can keep them small. We have a big one running the full length of our property. It's a few hundred metres long. Well, not the full length, half the length, so it's probably 150 metres, 100 metres or so. We run that, it's about 6-7 feet high, and I trim that a couple of times a year. But fantastic windbreak, green all year long, and looks clean and healthy. So Griselineas, there's plenty of them for sale. We've got Hebes here. Some are grown from seed and some are grown from cuttings, all off the same plants, which can be the trouble with the Hebes. So next year's lot I've just done cuttings, and you'll get a true representative of that plant. So these are all going to the property along the road as well in another couple of months. I had to cut these back because they peaked a bit early, so I've cut them back, trimmed the roots, and they do get a liquid feed, so they get some food. They could have a granular fertiliser, but I use a sort of like a seaweed type one that I mix up, and I just spray it with the knapsack and spray them to give them a feed. And because they're going rural, they're not going in a ornamental garden at a house, they'll be fine. They'll shoot away yet, so obviously they do look a bit stalky, but they've got new shoots just starting to come on them, and they're not going down to that job probably for at least 2 months yet, so another 8 weeks. So they've got all these new shoots, but they'll shoot away, so they'll be fine. But otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't normally have plants looking quite as chopped back as that for sale. The reason we're a wholesale nursery, well, the difference between wholesale and retail in my mind is, well, obviously the price. Wholesale's cheaper than retail. We sell to public, we sell to councils, we sell to regional councils, we'll sell to anybody. We're not open, well, we are open, we don't have signs out, and we don't have people just dropping in. Usually people will ring up, so if you're keen to ring up, check out my details on the website and send me an email or give me a call. And so that makes a difference between, say, us and a garden centre or a Mitre 10 or a Bunnings or whatever big store you go to with plants. We don't have labels, we don't have pots with writing company names on them. We don't have staff to walk around and help you, apart from myself of course, but there's not staff everywhere. We don't have trolleys. We don't have all the amenities that you get in a shop. You know, we don't have toilets, and we don't have lighting and all those sorts of things. So there's a whole lot of things we don't have, exactly like other wholesale nurseries. We just grow the plants, no frills. Want to buy them, you come and buy them. We'll help them load them in, we'll have a chat, I'll show you around the garden. But that's as far as it goes. So that's the difference between us and retail mostly. Just less frills, but still selling plants, which is one thing in common. So that's how we keep our prices down. So we call ourselves a wholesale plant nursery, and that's what we are, a true wholesale prices. Sometimes it's demoralising because you see this plant that you sell, well, I don't sell to retail outlets, but I go and see plants like that and they'll be selling them for anywhere from 200 to 300% markup, which they have to do to cover all those staff and all those benefits that you get at a retail shop, which we all enjoy for all sorts of goods. But if I've sold it to them and they put it up, it's like, oh, why didn't I ask for that price? Well, you're not going to pay that price wholesale, and hopefully you'll buy bulk, so it's quantity turning over is the plan. Same as all wholesale things, it's no secret. So we moved down and now into a shady area of the nursery. So this is the shade house. We've got things that don't like the sun, and some of them mostly they don't like frost either. So this doubles up both ways. It works for the frost, but mainly shade over summer. So these are Mahoe, whitey wood, their common name. Melicitus is their botanical name. So they grow into a big tree. They have white stems, that's why they're called whitey wood. And a lot of these sold. In fact, last year a lot didn't sell, so I potted them up into these bigger pots. So you see they're not in 1.4 litre. That's not a 14 centimetre, they're a bit bigger. It's probably 1.7 litre. They will probably be all right through to next year, but like I said, there's months to go this year yet, so I'm expecting them to sell. These are some of our larger grade plants. These don't like the frost, or at least when they're this size. Once they turn into more of a tree, once they're sort of 8 feet upwards, they'll probably be all right. So at the moment they come in here for winter. I usually take them back out for the rest of the year, about probably October. Once the frosts are gone, I'll put them down in our lower nursery where the big trees are, and that just gives me a bit of room over summer if I've got smaller plants and seedlings and newly bagged stuff or potted things that want a bit of shade so they don't fry. So these are Rewa, Knightia excelsa. They're in the Protea family. They have a big long sort of flower, a bit like a grevillea, if you know what a grevillea looks like, sort of spidery, but it's quite a long sort of a spidery flower. So they're quite nice. We have some Nio, which is Myoporum latum. Fantastic little berries, purple berries on them when they're ripe. They're just a big bushy green thing, but they're good for filling and in bush. These are tawa. You've probably heard of a tawa. Huge trees, tawas. These are growing well. So these are looking, if you take them, if you put their bag into the ground, I'll pick up one that's not too tall. So these are in a PB12, that's about an 8 litre. So if you put that down into the ground, coming down to, it'd be about 6 foot high, these tawa. They're a few years old now. They're probably 4 years old. But they're fantastic. If you're going to plant some bush and you want some real trees, that's what you'd stick in. And there's plenty more big ones down in our other part of the nursery we'll get to later. We've got some pigeon wood growing here. Hetecaria. They won't be ready this year, they're fairly small. But they're quite I would say rare, but not easy to find in nurseries, not easy to find for sale. So they'll be available next year. They may even get potted up just to become a bit more established. We've got a few ferns in here. These are a tree fern, Dicksonia fibrosa. They're only small. They'll grow they'll grow with the trunk, the fronds off them. So they're very small. They're not for sale yet. They don't have enough fruits, and I want them to get up a little bit more, this sort of size. These are a shield fern, but I want them to at least be able to stand up above the grass. So these obviously, as a general rule, all like to be in the shade, all the fernery things. There's a few other mixed ferns, some not many, some a few, some I'll keep for myself for our place. You know, some of them there's only 10, 12 plants, so if someone comes looking for ferns and they want a selection, they could have 1 or 2 of them, or I'll use them around our place. Yeah, we'll go and have a look at propagation now. So this is one of our propagation, one of our areas where we put newly propagated or plants that are seeding or cuttings. So it was a little shade house, but it was still getting very hot, or it was getting a bit of sun over summer, not too bad, but the rain was drumming through. So we put a plastic roof on, which means everything has to be watered in here. It stays fairly shady, so this time of the year I don't water every day, even though they're not getting rained on, they stay damp. We have some mist sprinklers too that are on timer. We have computer timers that turn all the sprinklers on in the nurseries. So that keeps things watered over summer, but I still check. Obviously little plants need checking to make sure all is good. So they start in a tray when I collect the seeds. So we collect seeds from off our property, for our bush block, and some from selected sites, not on our property, and sow them either fresh. Some of them I store in the fridge for a year or two, they're still fine. Some don't, some eventually just won't come up, so can't keep them for too long. So these are the tea tree, Leptospermum scoparium, my shorthand for the nursery manager, which is me, so it's Leptospermum. So they went in on the 28th of November last year. So they've been in 6 months. And the same with right next to them is the Kunzea. They went in 6 weeks earlier than that, October last year. We've got some small flax. So these next to the flax are Kaikatea. So these are the tallest New Zealand native Kaikatea. Dacrocarpus dacridioides is their botanical name. So they were harvested as seeds last year, I'd guess it was May. They came up fairly quickly, but I only just potted them up. They only just really had enough fruits, and only just, not even a month ago. So that's them. So it's amazing to think they're going to get hundreds of feet high, but it's like all plants, I guess. It's like an oak tree, isn't it? Plant the acorn and get a massive oak. Well, these are the same. You plant a little tiny little seed and get a huge, tall, straight tree. More flax. So down here at the very bottom, we've got trays that look very uninteresting and nondescript. So they're mostly Matai and Mero, both Prenopotes ferruginea and taxifolia. So they're huge native New Zealand trees. So they have collect the fresh seeds, the berries, soak them, give them a wash to get the flesh off. Then I cold stratify them, which means you put them in a bag, plastic bag, Ziploc bag, put them in a bag with a bit of potting mix. Make sure it's just a wee bit damp, seal it, make sure there's some air in there, and they go into the fridge. So that's cold stratification, and I leave them in the fridge for 6 weeks. It helps to even out their germination. Having said that, well, then when they come out, just sow them in a tray, exactly like they are here. So those are just over a year old, those trays. So they can take up to 24 months to propagate. So they are long term. So they're done just over a year, and there's no action there yet. You kind of hope there will be, and I'm sure there will be. But yeah, those are very long term. Quite a few natives are sort of in that realm, but that's getting up there 2 years, or at least a year to 2 years. Yeah, so you've got sowing the straight seeds, got seed cold stratification. You also have hot stratification, so I get the Kakabig seeds, the Clyanthus. I haven't got any growing here, but we saw the plants outside, and they like to be soaked in hot water. Pour them in put hot water over them, 24 hours, then sow them, and that helps them come up. The Ko-Fis, the Sephora, they're little yellow seeds. You've probably seen them on the ground and maybe didn't even know what they were. Some of you, some will obviously, a lot of you will know, but some may not know. We'll find some of them later in the year or beginning of next year when they're out, and I'll show you how to propagate some of them. But they need nicking because they've got such a hard shell, so that I get nail clippers and just nip the very end off them, then soak them in warm water for a day, sow them. So everybody's got a slightly different thing. Some plants have no qualms about being sown, and you just sow them and they'll come up. Some of them will come up within 3-4 weeks. A lot of them are sort of the 6 weeks, 3 months, an extreme, like the Mero and Matai, 24 months. So through here we've got Alstradaria, which are the toi. Oh, here's another very slow one. So you've all heard of a Rimu. So these are Rimu. These are the same age as those Kaikateas that we just looked at. Harvested and potted up. So they're growing, but they're very, very small. Just for myself, for our garden, so I couldn't find some conifers I wanted, so I did propagate some. They were August last year, various conifers. A lot of them got roots on them, so these aren't for sale, obviously. Well, they're not a native. I mean, I could still sell them, but they were just for us. And they managed to come up, and I've got them out in pots, so that's good. Some of those did work. Through here we've got hen and chicken ferns, which were sown off the little bulblets, the little pups that come off the branches, the fronds of the ferns. They're very small. Some of them may not live, but they had roots, so I planted a lot of them. I just planted because they had the roots, and I thought if they've got a root, they're kind of on their way. So they've done that much, I'll give them a chance. And then just various things through here, more toi and New Zealand iris. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, our trip through the nursery. We might end this one here today, and we'll call this part 1. Next week I'll put part 2 up. We'll go into our lower nursery where the bigger trees are, and we'll cover what happens with excess plants or things that aren't looking so good, how we deal with those, and a little bit more propagation. If you're interested in some plants, have a look at the link below to our Misty Acres nursery website. And also, if you like our videos or want to know more, click on the like, click on the subscribe, comment, feel free. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Get out in the garden if you can. See you later. Woo!